like he's going to like try to rip into them, just being this very egotistical, maniacal, evil villain. And so what I want to do is I want to get their emotions going. I want to actually get to them. Like I want for the things he says to actually land and piss them off a little bit, right? Like in real life. And I don't mean like I want to piss them off above table. I mean, I want the players to be like, oh my gosh, like I want them to feel a certain kind of way because I want that emotional buy-in. I want them to be really invested when they finally face him and then he's challenging, but they're the player characters. They're the stars of the show. That the characters are the main protagonists. And I want them to be very emotionally fueled to fight this guy. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GM Philosopher, and this is GM Philosophy, the channel where we empower game masters to run better games. Just a little bit about me. I have 24 years of experience running TTRPGs, being a game master. I am currently a full-time professional D&D game master and TTRPG content creator. This is my career and what I'm doing with my life. And I'm very happy about it, very thrilled, very grateful to be able to do this. So today I want to talk a little bit about session prep. I'm prepping some stuff for some of my sessions coming up. There are 4 things I've been thinking about that I think are important to think about, especially as you get to that midpoint. So a lot of my groups are around level 7, 8, right? Getting ready to go up into, getting close to 10. So we're getting into that higher power level, okay? And there are some things that I'm thinking about now that I have to think about more than I did when they were maybe levels 1 or 2 or 3, because power levels are getting higher. They're getting more magic items. Everything is getting more sophisticated, and it's getting easier than ever for an encounter to just become a wash. Like for them to just like steamroll it and figure it out in less than 1 combat turn. And this can create some weird dynamics. You want to create encounters. You want to create situations that are very engaging for everyone, right? You want to think of your whole party. You want your whole party to have stuff to do. And when I say that, I mean, you want to give every character time in the spotlight in sort of a unique way. Now, sometimes that'll be combat. Sometimes that'll give players the opportunity to do role play or to solve a puzzle or to find something or discover something, okay? But as I'm getting ready to create these encounters, I'm thinking of these 4 things, okay? Number 1, I'm thinking about the situation from a top-down approach. So I'm not trying to design encounters like from the top down just for like specially suited for the players. The first thing I think about is what would actually be present, what would actually be going on. So this is just, for example, if I'm going to design, an encounter where there's a prisoner being held in a fortress, and then there's maybe the enemy is holding the prisoner there, and this is a certain kind of operation, and I know that the player characters are probably going to try to break in and like rescue the prisoner or something, then I want to just think about for a minute. I want to just leave the players out of it, and I want to just think, okay, what would this military base have there naturally? Like what makes sense? Would they have spellcasters? Would they have an army? Would they have any animals? What kind of base is this? What kind of security measures would they have, right? And I want to think about the lore of the encounter without bringing the characters even into it. So that's kind of going to formulate the basis for the encounter, okay? So this is one thing that I'm thinking about, okay? Now, number 2, I'm wanting to think about the hook of the encounter. What happens to get the group like hooked into the situation? There has to be some kind of buy-in. If the player characters don't care about it, then what you're basically looking at is a situation where, well, you can design an encounter, but if you don't hook them right, they're not going to pay attention. They're not going to get involved. They're not going to care. So how do we do this? Now, there are many ways to do this. This isn't a video about how to hook players in, but I do this. One of the next things I think about, the second thing I think about is the hook. How are you going to get the players to actually care about it? Are you going to have an NPC that they trust or care about be captured and taken to the fort? Are you going to have them stumble across it, and then they kind of hear rumors about what's going on, and it's going to kind of trigger their moral instincts? Or are you going to tie it to a player's backstory? There are many ways to do this, but you want to make sure that, you're thinking about that hook, because without a good hook, what's going to be the point? They're just going to skip the encounter. Now, I actually wrote a book all about how to increase emotional player buy-in in your adventures. In my book, The Advanced Art of TTRPG Game Mastery, 50-page ebook I wrote about how to create emotional resonance, which basically means how to get your players to actually care about your game and keep wanting to come back to it. If you want to grab my whole thesis on that, now that's not just about designing encounters, that's about running your table that way, getting maximum buy-in from your players for your game. If you want to run the kind of game where players just can't wait to get back to it every single week, maybe even begging you to run more sessions, grab that book. Links in the description for about the price of a cup of coffee. You can learn my secrets about that. But you've got to create that awesome hook. Okay, so here's the third thing I'm thinking about. Is now we're bringing the characters in. And I'm thinking, how do I avoid either making this a wash on the side of the characters or the side of the enemy? So we want to challenge the characters. We want to give the players a good challenge. Now, this is a game. If we get too realistic or too immersive, then we're not going to think about balancing. We do want to think a little bit about balancing. We have to think about what would be balanced, what would be fair, what would be unfair, and then what is the desired outcome. So a lot of my encounters, what I'll do for balancing is I'll just think about the obvious strengths of the group. And I'll try to design 1 or 2 or maybe 3 layers of buffer that are gonna challenge them as they move through the encounter, right? So, for example, right now in this group that I'm designing for, I have, they have a lot of they're doing a lot of stuff like spirit guardians, right? And they're getting really powerful in melee. They're getting really powerful in melee. So I'm not going to want to just have a bunch of low level, guards and that be the whole encounter. In this encounter, I'm going to want to balance it out by posing some ranged risks. There's definitely going to be some higher level spellcasters. I haven't thrown that many high level spellcasters at this group. I've been kind of saving that for a good opportunity. So I'm definitely going to put some of that in there. I may put some flying combat in there because this group isn't as good with flying. I think there's only one of them at the moment who kind of actively flies. So that might give that character like a good challenge, right? I want to challenge everyone in unique ways. So what I'm going to do that is I'm just going to build, first of all, environmental structures in. Like there are going to be big, there's a big gate. They're going to have to figure out how to get through the gate or get over the wall. They're going to have to figure out the technology. There's going to be like an energy thing where they're trying to blend 2 creatures together and like make a monster. So they're trying to figure out how that's working, how can they thwart it? Should they try to thwart it? What is even going on? So there's going to be some investigating going on. If they just go in and start hacking and slashing, then the chances are they're not going to actually discover what's going on. And I think that this group is pretty smart. They're going to want to investigate it. So I anticipate them doing some reconnaissance of the fort and things like that, right? So we have some things getting built in here, and I'm trying to just think of not only balance, also trying to think of what the group's good at and how I can kind of challenge them in new and unique ways. And I also want to challenge them in ways that are fun, right? I don't just want to steamroll them or anything. I want to give them moments to shine. But here's my rule of thumb on this. You always want to kind of design it to think, this is going to be pretty tough. I don't think they're going to be able to figure this out. And then what usually happens is, because your players are probably very brilliant and very creative, they're going to figure things out. They're going to figure out how to overcome the encounter. And then that's going to give them that moment to shine. I put a lot of trust and faith in my players to figure it out. Even when I design an encounter where I think to myself, actually, this is probably going to kill them or whatever, then the truth is they usually figure it out and then some. And this makes them feel good. This makes me impressed, right? This is just how it goes. So that's my kind of rule of thumb. The fourth thing that I think about is I want to think about the personality and how I'm going to evoke emotion. So this is really important. So for example, for this particular encounter, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke emotion by having kind of an emotional situation where there are 2 creatures, good creatures, who are going to literally be destroyed, so that kind of an evil fey wizard guy can blend their souls together and make an evil monster. So there's the element of so there's kind of a bit of moral sensitivity here. There's the ethics of it. It's oh my gosh, these these beautiful but helpless creatures are going to be destroyed if this bad guy is allowed to do what he's trying to do. And then, so they're trying to do that. There's also the element of like, well, they're captured. If they get to them early, maybe they could free them and get their help, right? So that's an element of it too. We want to give them the opportunity to think it through in that way. But then we want to think about this bad guy. We want to think about, what kind of character he is, what kind of things he would say, what are his mannerisms going to be like. I want him to be the kind of villain that they're going to really hate, that they're going to really despise, that they're going to want to kill. They're going to want to fight this guy. And then I want to try to create opportunities where they're going to get to experience his social quirks. They're going to experience his malevolence. They're going to experience the evil. They're going to experience his attitude. So what will probably happen is he'll project himself in visions to them as they're going about the battle or something leading up to him, where he's going to talk smack to them, where he's going to, rib them. He's going to like belittle them, try to tear them down, basically tell them, they have failed. They're not good enough. They've walked right into a trap. In fact, he's going to use them to power his experiments. They're do they know how big of a failure they are? Like, he's going to like try to rip into them, just being this very egotistical, maniacal, evil villain. And so what I want to do is I want to get their emotions going. I want to actually get to them. Like, I want for the things he says to actually land and piss them off a little bit, right? Like in real life. And I don't mean like I want to piss them off above table. I mean, I want the players to be like, oh my gosh, like I want them to feel a certain kind of way because I want that emotional buy-in. I want them to be really invested when they finally face him, and then he's challenging, but they're the player characters. They're the stars of the show. The characters are the main protagonists. And I want them to be very emotionally fueled to fight this guy. If I don't do a good job of getting those, the emotional stuff going, they're not going to care as much. It's not going to be as fun. And we want a very memorable, emotional encounter. So that's the fourth thing that I'm thinking about as I design this encounter. So there you go. That's what I'm doing to try to make this encounter really not only good, a good quality encounter that's fun and unique and provides challenges. Every single encounter, every single session in a TTRPG, in my opinion, should include 4 basic ingredients. It should include some exploration and discovery. It should include some kind of combat, even just a little bit. There should be some drama and role play, right? And then there should be loot of some kind. Okay. Now, but there's an undercurrent of that, which is we need to emotionally engage our players. I believe that the primary responsibility of the game master is to empower your players to enjoy telling the best story of their character possible. So this is a guiding thread throughout all of session design. But how do we do this? The most enjoyable way and the best way to tell a character story is to make sure that there are emotions at stake. There are stakes, not only physically in the world, right? Strategically, there are stakes. Other creatures may be relying on them. The world may be relying on them. The village might be destroyed if they don't help it, whatever it is. But also we want emotional stakes for them. We want them to actually have tie-ins. We want them to be able to see through their character's eyes and think, oh my gosh, my character would feel a certain kind of way. And maybe even it tugs at their heartstrings or it jabs them in the anger feels, whatever it is. But we want to get them to feel something. And then when they actually start to feel real feelings, that's when you get real emotional buy-in into the story. So that's what I'm working on today. Now, keep in mind, I am a full-time professional D&D game master. If you are interested in doing this, I've written another book called The Pro GM's Guidebook. This book basically outlines how I was able to go from 0 pro games to having 5 full pro games and quitting my job to go full-time. That all the things I learned about how to be successful at posting your game listings and then running them and actually managing the players and managing the community. It's all in there. 142 pages of stuff I wish I would have known before I started. If you have aspirations of either launching a side hustle, pro GM business, or you want to go full time, make sure to grab that. Link's in the description for about the price of 2 cups of coffee. You can grab that and make sure that you join our free GM Philosophy Discord. Link to that is in the description as well. We are almost 700 game masters strong, growing every single day. A fantastic community for game masters who want to get better at the craft. Friends, thank you so much for coming back. That's going to be a wrap for this one. Roll some D100s for me at your next game. Empowering game masters to run better games is the goal. I'll see you awesome people on the next one.